Deep within the Segmentum Pacificus, to the galactic west of Holy Terra, an event known as the War of the False Primarch saw the 33rd millennium plunged into war. Little is known about the true events of this conflict, being a minor footnote in Games Workshop's expansive history of the Warhammer 40k universe, but not all has been lost to the ravages of time and censure. While the identity of the False Primarch is unknown, they succeeded in rousing chaos and rebellion in the sector, biting back against the hand of the greater Imperium. The High Lords of Terra saw fit to task the Adeptus Astartes in the suppression of the False Primarch and inducted 5 Space Marine chapters into a holy fraternity dubbed the Pentarchy of Blood. The Carcharodons, the Flesh Eaters, the Red Talons, the Death Eagles, and the Charnel Guard saw to the sector running red with traitor blood over the next 80 years, eventually leading to the False Primarch slain and their name purged from history itself. In this video series, I'll be going into the 5 chapters of the Pentarchy of Blood, some being more famous in the eyes of the fandom, and some a little more obscure, with today's chapter being the galaxy's hungriest boys, the Flesh Eaters. The Flesh Eaters are a Blood Angel's successor chapter from an obscured past. Little is known about their origins or what founding they come from, with their only concrete history being that they were already active in the 33rd millennium when the War of the False Primarch broke out. Besides a few of their known campaigns, the Flesh Eaters are an enigma, but whether or not that history is guarded or simply lost to time is, well, if you couldn't guess the pattern by now, unknown. The Flesh Eaters are one of the oldest living chapters within the world of Warhammer 40k, proudly standing at the top of that ultra-iconic Space Marine lineup within the pages of Rogue Trader next to their gene cousins, the Flesh Terrors. Just 2 flesh-related chapters, hanging around, just standing right next to each other, literally side by side. Contrary to popular belief, that's not exposition for the sake of this video narrative. Rather, it was a foreshadowing to a very painful experience rooted in my inability to read and the misery that emanates from it, but we'll get to that. Despite their status as Rogue Trader veterans, the Flesh Eaters are, as many of their fellow brother chapters are, overshadowed by the magnificence of the Blood Angels. Even as popular as the Blood Angels' successors can be, Games Workshop seems determined to keep the main Space Marine legions in the spotlight for as long as possible, and allow the lesser spawn of Sanguinius to languish in obscurity, outside of the occasional novel. Except the Lamenters, they're pretty much professional languishers at this point, and we love them for it. Now get the hell out, this is the Flesh Eaters video. Speaking of angel spawn, the Flesh Eaters are dramatically noted as fatally undone by their gene seed on various wikis and resources, although what that actually means is never actually clarified anywhere. In general, the sons of Sanguinius enjoy long lifespans, delicious food, and long walks on the beach, yet their gene seed also changes the aspirant's physiology, giving them pale skin and long fang-like teeth. Most notably, though, they are the unfortunate inheritors of 2 major gene seed defects, the Red Thirst and the Black Rage. This is probably common knowledge for a lot of you guys, but I'm going to quickly touch on them. The Red Thirst imbues the Battle Brother with an insatiable lust for blood, a flaw they generally deem shameful, and go to great lengths to conceal from the larger populace, unless you are a Battle Brother of the Blood Drinkers, which I covered in the Achilles Crusade video. It's in the name, really. The Black Rage invokes periods of heightened aggression in the Battle Brother, caused by the psychic imprint of Sanguinius' death that is deeply ingrained within the gene seed. Could the Flesh Eaters' true past lay somewhere in the middle of this Bermuda Triangle of implications? Their name, their obscured history, and the fatal undoing? Could their name be more than a name, maybe a nom de guerre? A stigma, perhaps, gained by the unfortunate snacking of human flesh in the moment's passion? The Lexiconum blatantly states that they engage in cannibalistic rituals, yet it cites no source for this claim, making it baseless conjecture at best. Regardless of the rumors that whirl about them, the Flesh Eaters carry on in their duties, all the while faithful to the Imperium. Speaking of the Flesh Eaters' service, not much is known about their enemies they may or may not have snacked upon. They have been described as some as aggressive and always eager to engage their enemies, their most famous veteran squad being known far and wide as the Jaws of Doom. On top of their normal uniform of pure red with a slim vertical stripe down the helmet's center, the Jaws of Doom ornament their pauldrons with a monstrous skull, and their helms with a snarling maw, which is supposed to look badass, but it's Rogue Trader art, so it ends up looking a little doofy in that Rogue Trader way that absolutely melts my heart of stone. The Flesh Eaters were, of course, instrumental in their involvement in the War of the False Primarch, which is why they're in this video series, but they have had their hands in conflicts both famous and obscure. On the more obscure side, the Flesh Eaters are noted to have participated in the Alvatine suppression, with nothing known about the incident, save that the Flesh Eaters deployed a spearhead force of rhinos painted in desert fashion. Many chapters in the current canon are hesitant to repaint their armor and camouflage, yet this was pretty common practice back in the Rogue Trader days. Another recorded conflict under their belt is the Golance War. Golance? Actually, I like Golance. We're going to go with that. Led by notable chapter commander Isaiah, not Isaiah, it's close, but it's not there, the Flesh Eaters were trying to usurp control of a planet that had come under occupation by Eldar forces, looking to gain control of a secret stash of weapons on the planet. While the Flesh Eaters were mighty in their assault, the Eldar were
dug in like an Alabama tick,
accruing a kill count of 350 Astartes before the Mentors chapter were able to reinforce the Flesh Eaters and expel those stupid sexy elves from the planet. The Flesh Eaters operated under strength after the Golance War until High Fleet Leviathan threatened to devour all life on the Blood Angels' homeworld of Baal. The Flesh Eaters responded to their distress calls, with their chief librarian, Scarabon, joining a war council before the siege to enlighten his brother chapters on the nature of the Tyranid menace. During this council, Captain Sutona of the Angels of Light, a name-only successor chapters of the Blood Angels, accused the librarian of gaining his knowledge of the beasts from the Eldar, to which he replied, and I quote, "Yeah, so?" Scarabon then reveals a theory that he had been working on with these Eldar scientists on how the hive mind may be a sort of middle stage evolution for the species, the metapod of the Tyranid life cycle, if you will, on their path to true spiritual butter freedom. An interesting theory if you think about it, but kind of weird to bring up in the middle of a war council? Okay, I guess Sutona kind of forced his hand. I do wonder if he was reprimanded for consorting with Xenos, though, or maybe he just died in the assault and he just didn't have to worry about it. It's kind of hard to punish a dead guy, but then again, this is Warhammer 40k, so there are ways if you're determined enough. In the aftermath of the devastation of Baal, Commander Dante of the Blood Angels, now newly crowned regent of the Imperium Nihilus, launched the Angels Halo campaign based within the Red Scar system. A system known for its blood-like crimson glow, many successors of the Blood Angels are now fighting to reclaim the territory from the High Fleet menace. With the introduction of Primaris Marines, the Flesh Eaters were brought back up to strength to take part in this conflict, something that Gabriel Seth of the Flesh Terrors surprisingly did not respond well to in the novel Red Fury, and I will actually cite this one because I did buy this one for one of my past videos. But this pissed off Seth for some reason. Part of me wonders what the Flesh Eaters had done to the chapter to have the Flesh Terrors respond so disappointingly, but most of me really just doesn't give a shit because I've had to correct the script like 40 times because I keep writing Flesh Terror instead of Flesh Eater, and the section is making it worse. But yeah. Now with reinforcements in hand, the Flesh Eaters' last known location was a drawn-out conflict on the shrine world of Akrabalar. The veteran Flesh Eaters are defending the planet against High Fleet Leviathan with the newly raised blood scythes from the Ultima founding. A real big brother bonding experience for the bitty baby blood scythes if you think about it. They, however, have been reinforced by the Kruer blades, the biggest sword fanatics this side of the Mississippi, or the Great Rift, if you will. But seriously, just go look at any material around them. It's just a list of guys and their favorite sword. It's f***ing hilarious. The Kruer blades have sentenced themselves to a self-imposed penitent crusade for failing to reach Baal before it was, devastated. And so wander the Red Scar, helping in the Angel's Halo campaign wherever they can. Now, before I get into building this model, I gotta tell you guys something. You know that bit about me mixing up the flesh terrors and flesh eaters constantly? Yeah, that wasn't a bit. I have been constantly mixing up the flesh eaters and flesh terrors since the start of this project. You want to know how bad it got? I hesitate to even say this, but I built a flesh terror at first, but I did the whole thing. I crafted it, I painted it, all on camera, spin arounds. I took a fucking group photo of them with the wrong dude. I wrote a script for the flesh terrors. Like, it was a lot of work. Only when I posted some whip pictures to my Patreon did one of my patrons say, hey, did you get mixed up? Then I realized what I had done.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Regardless, I want to shout out my patron Nuz for catching this mistake before I went through the trouble of editing this video and then uploading it and then making myself look really stupid. So everyone please thank Nuz. But also, fair warning, if I ever do a video on flesh terrors, I'm 100% recycling this footage. I put way too much work into it. I'm doing it. I don't care. For the flesh eater conversion, I decided to use my final Indominus Lieutenant, it being the last one stashed away from splitting those old starter kits with a friend who really needed a block of Necron warriors. Not only is this mini just pretty good, even though he's kind of sticking his whole crotch out for some reason, but it would make recovering from the video mix-up a little less painful. If you've seen the Red Wings video, I tore out the Marine's abdominal area to replace the new style tabard with a more traditional one with resculpting, but I'd figured I'd just leave it unaltered this time around. Not only is it just quicker, but someone out there might actually like this style of tabard, and I know it's an opinion, but they are wrong, but I'm going to cater to them for once. I'm not biased at all. As I had planned to make our Marine a member of the infamous Jaws of Death, I wanted to keep with a melee-oriented loadout, and the Storm Shield is known for reliably keeping people not dead, or at least prolonging the deading. The default arm of the Primaris Lieutenant worked absolutely fine, as is for this task, although a diagonal sliver was taken off near the base of the arm to allow the arm to rest lower. Not only did this kind of change the pose up in general, but it had the side effect of making the shield touch the edge of the foot, allowing the piece to have two connection points, which gives this piece a lot of durability once the plastic glue goes on. Like, I dropped this thing really hard, and it was fine. So, yeah, that's good. This lieutenant has a hole on the left side of the waist to hold a sheathed sword, but I wanted to save that bit for other projects. I took a generic reliquary from, I don't know, some random Marine kit. It doesn't matter. You get like a billion of these all over the place. Who cares? But I used some sprue glue to attach it over the hole. Easy fix, and now I have a cool sword to use for another project. On the other side of the mini, I had the random urge to try and fill the empty holster with a handgun grip, since he's not actively holding one of his pistols. I didn't want to make anything too detailed, just something to kind of fill the silhouette, and hopefully maybe trick someone into thinking there's a proper pistol there, if they didn't know and they're not looking too hard, you know. I took a piece of square styrene rod and just cut out a very basic handle shape. I rounded the end before attaching it, and, you know, for pure silhouette purposes, you know, it gets the point across. It's time to arm this guy in more ways than one. The right arm was a recycled Assault Intercessor arm because, again, I'm sitting on a stash of a billion of them. The pistol hand was removed in favor of arming the Marine with a chainsword from the Assault Squad kit. The purity seal on the blade didn't match the motion of the pose, however, so it had to be trimmed and sanded off to look believable. The pre-molded pauldron on the arm was sliced off, and while the Jaws of Death are noted to have monster skulls drawn on their pauldron, I decided to use this Crux Terminatus with a skull on it. It's less freehanding, and the skull motif is still kind of there in a sense. I think it's a good compromise for, trying to play catch-up. With the body finally assembled, I mounted a head to the Marine, although I did think the Primaris helmet wasn't really cutting it here. I eventually did swap it out for a beakie helmet with molded laurels that I printed a bunch of years ago. I don't remember where I got the STL, but if I can find it, I will put it in the description. But I think it was a good call, and it'll really invoke that Rogue Trader Jaws of Death in the painting stage. And I forgot a power pack, but whatever. I just grabbed one from the pile. It's time for paint. I wanted a nice retro red for my Flesh Eater, so I started from this white primer and layered on Vallejo Flat Red. This paint is a bit thin, so it took 3 coats, but the result was nice and vibrant. I'm a big fan of that fiery hot Blood Angels red from the older editions, so I got to dry brushing the entire mini with an orange. My orange paint is also really thin, but 2 rounds of dry brushing got me a good color. Actually, my Vallejo yellow, green, orange, and sometimes my red are kind of thin for some reason. Maybe I do have more of a reason to check out that 2 thin coats line. I don't know. I don't want to buy paint if I've got paint. But anyways. After the orange dry brush on the edges of the mini, I mixed yellow and orange to get an even brighter orange, and dry brushed areas of focus. It ended up pretty good in my opinion, although the orange was a little messy, so I tidied it up with some red glazes. With the armor done, I turned to the menial labor, the joints and metallics and all that stuff nobody likes painting. I base coat all of these in a dark gray, which will make sure all of the white primer is covered, and it'll ensure that the metallic layers go on a little easier later on. Some areas like the pouches got a touch of neutral gray highlights as well. I tried to offset the warm temperature of the armor with a cool black set of pouches to kind of even it all out. Plus, I don't know, it's kind of the retro style for the Blood Angels from what I've seen. I mixed a white with my Vallejo Sky Gray to base coat all of the robes, purity seals, and the Crux Terminatus, the plan being to tint these tan with a brown wash down the road. Afterwards, I base coated all of my silvers. The various decorative bits like the crotch trinkets and the shield trim and the laurel all got a nice coat of gold, and it was coming along nicely. Looking at the mini, I knew a wash was really going to make this thing pop, but before that, I had to finish a few things, starting with the chainsword. The chainsword was painted white, and I quickly used a marker to sketch out some loose hazard stripes to really heighten that old school vibe. They're not perfect stripes, but I don't really care about getting my stripes perfect. To me, I'd rather just YOLO a straight line than fiddle with masking tape for like 9 hours and just drag the whole thing out. These days, my time is very valuable, and when it comes to making good decisions, I've proven many years ago that I cannot be trusted with that task, so here we are. With most of the miniature done, I had to put on the Flesh Eater's signature stripe down the helmet, which is notably a more narrow stripe than what you see on like lieutenant stripes these days. I used that same white and sky gray mix to put that little line down the helmet. For this paint mix, white lightens the mix, while that sky gray gives it like nearly 1 coat coverage. Seriously, Vallejo Sky Gray is probably one of my favorite paints ever. This stuff is great. For the Jaws of Death signature doofy maw, I started with my white to make a general outline of the maw, and then I alternated between my dark gray and my white mixture to refine the tooth pattern inside of that shape. I also had to freehand the chapter heraldry since, the flesh terrors ruined everything. But I have found STLs available online to purchase if you're looking to print up some Flesh Eater pauldrons. These STLs come with a hard transfer that you can slap onto any pauldron, or you can just print the entire pauldron with the symbol on it, which is what I do, just because it seems easier. I'll put this link and any other good links for the flesh eaters I find in the description below. And now, it's finally time to wash. I mix up my universal wash, the marine juice mixture I talked about in the Carcharodons video. 1 part black wash, 1 part brown wash, and 2 parts glazed medium makes for an awesome wash that you can just throw over an entire miniature. The original mix only calls for 1 drop of glazed medium, but I find 2 kind of eases up on how much that wash tints the base coats that you have down, but you can definitely drop my mixture down to the original even ratio if you want a stronger tint. I just try not to let it tint too much. I mean, it still tints a little bit, but not as much as, well, yeah, you know, whatever. And with the flesh eater washed, all that was left was to scrap up a rusty dusty base, give them a nice rim job, and call it done. And ta-da! 1 flesh eaters of the Jaws of Doom Assault Squad. I know this may be a sort of basic conversion, but I think it looks pretty good, and you know, for having to delay the video order I was producing these in and quickly whip up something that I actually managed to do in a single night, I mean, for me, I'm a very slow worker when it comes to painting and all this. So doing all this in a single night, that's pretty good for my standards, honestly. In general, I want to say that I like the flesh eaters, but I think it comes with trauma because now I literally cannot say either flesh eaters or flesh terrors without having some paranoid breakdown that I'm about to say the wrong chapter. And I will say this right now. In the future, a couple months, years, decades from now, when I have to talk about the flesh eaters, I will accidentally say flesh terrors at some point. And I'm sorry. But this project has broken me. If you like what I do here, or you don't want to miss the next video, I'd love to have your subscription. If you really like what I do and want to support me, you can also find me on Patreon, or you could follow me on Instagram. With that being said, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.